as we go into the holiday period, young and unemployed black men make up the largest number of people who are seeking treatment for substance abuse in the capital, Tshwane. That's according to a research symposium hosted by the University of Pretoria that detailed the problematic use of drugs in the capital. The data collected between January and June of this year has also found the number of people who sought treatment has also risen significantly during the period. To help us make sense of this, I'm joined now by Professor Jannie Hugo, Director of the Community-Orientated Primary Cares Research Unit at the University of Pretoria. Prof, a very good evening to you. Welcome to News at Prime. So it is mainly young black men with no matric and no work who are involved or battling substance abuse, shall we say, and seeking treatment in the capital. What is driving that?
Okay, maybe I should just make sure that we talk here about substance use of illicit substances. Obviously, the biggest harm-producing substance in society is alcohol and tobacco. But we talk here about specifically people who are addicted to mostly heroin and some other illicit substances. And yeah, basically it is a symptom of our society, of people who lose hope and end up becoming used to using substances, and then specifically the harm that comes with those substances, especially if they inject the drugs and get infections around that and other illnesses, also the social harm that comes from using the substances. So that's what we've been working on since the last more than 5-6 years. And in the symposium we just presented some of the realities of young people in the capital city, Tshwane.
And cannabis comes up in your report. Cannabis is easily accessible. I wonder how accessible heroin is in a place such as Tshwane.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tshwane is the heroin capital of South Africa, and cheap, low-grade heroin is widely available. It's often in the format of what's called nyaope, where the most active substance in that is heroin. So that is widely available, and I would say similar to the cannabis. But in Tshwane, heroin is widely available.
And the number of these young men who sought treatment in the period under review, January to June, stood at about 5,969. Now, when you hear such numbers, you wonder whether to take the positive in that they're seeking help, or to worry if that number is an indication that more are becoming dependent on substances. Prof, how should we read it?
I think, first of all, we should acknowledge that Tshwane is the only city in South Africa where people actually have very real access to harm reduction services, specifically for heroin, and therefore we find many people coming forward for that. I mean, obviously we need to be concerned about the numbers, and we know that from the numbers we see that there are many more who hasn't come or who are still making plans to come. So the numbers are really high. So we have to be worried. It is a growing problem, but what we have to be thankful about is that many of them do come forward, and many of them do get help, and many of them do get the opportunity with assistance to find structure and normality in their lives, and many of them start to make a success of their relationships and their lives, although it is not easy.
But also quite concerning from this data you've collected is the fact that A lot of them are young, under 30. 63% of those who came forward looking for help were under the age of 30, which means people are possibly becoming addicted younger and younger, which then could have possible lifelong effects when you consider that beating addiction is not a once-off event for most people.
Yeah, many people start using substances being young, being teenagers. Many of them would stop without any treatment, without any problems. But unfortunately, there's a significant number where it is becoming a problem, and especially if they don't have social support, and if the structures around them can't contain it, or if they land in jail or their family reject them, then it really becomes a problem. And that is concerning. But it is also a fact that many people do get over the issue with substances with minimum help. So it is really a mixed bag. But those that need help need to get help. And I am in agreement with you that society as a whole should be a concern. This is a problem for all of us. It's not just a problem of those we see on the street.
And Prof, finally, the problem, of course, with substance abuse is that it also exposes those who are addicted to possible or increased risk of infection to other things, such as HIV, because in some cases there's the sharing of needles.
It's a huge problem, and that is part of our intervention, is to provide clean needles and syringes, but especially HIV, but the most difficult one is hepatitis C, and a large proportion of the young people in Tshwane who inject drugs, that they share needles and then they get infected with hepatitis C. They also get some other infections, abscesses, etc. And then in the background, there's also TB that's often a part of the problem.
Professor Jannie Hugo, good to speak to you. And as we're speaking to you, Prof, we just put up some numbers that people can call if they're battling and need any sort of help for those who are perhaps battling suicidal thoughts, and even if you would like to speak to the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. I'll read those numbers out: 011-234-4837 if you want to speak to SADC, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. You can also call the Suicidal Emergency Hotline. That is 0800-567-567, because Prof was telling us that one of the drivers of the dependence on drugs in the capital, which they've identified, has to do with young people who've simply given up in life. Not hard to imagine why that would be, because we've been reporting in the last few weeks about the escalating crisis of unemployment in this country. The official tally is 34.9%, but even higher when you look at a youth assessment, and it's not much better, in fact, for South Africans who even have a qualification, because many of us were brought up thinking that if you do go to varsity or college, you still have a better chance, but even there, opportunities are closing up, and that is why we're seeing this increase in the number of people who want help. So make use of these numbers that are showing on screen now if you are aware, especially of young people, underage, teenagers as well, who are dependent on drugs and other substances. Make use of these numbers.